We had a lot of drywall repairs to do at the house. Right now, I'm making a patch for this spot by an electrical outlet. There was actually two electrical boxes next to each other here, and we removed one of them. So I cut a piece of drywall out to try to fit into that spot. The key for these small patches is to keep the paper attached to the face. Then you can use the paper to anchor it to the rest of the wall. You can see you put spackle around to kind of attach it. If you have larger holes like where these vents used to be, you're going to need to brace your pieces of drywall with something like some pieces of wood to keep it from collapsing inside. Here, Ben is anchoring the pieces of drywall with screws to the wood that he used to brace it. After your patch is securely in place, use some fiberglass mesh tape to put around the edges before spackling. This helps prevent any cracking later. I start by just kind of filling in where the mesh is to get that a little bit smoothed out, and after that I'll come back with more layers of spackle. It's important to let each layer dry before you come back. Here's my second coat. I didn't bother sanding in between these two coats because there wasn't really that much on the first layer. At this point, I try to get it as smooth as possible so that there won't be as much sanding before the next layer. After a little bit of sanding, I had to put on another layer of spackle. You can usually tell that you need another layer if you still have some low spots. High spots you can always sand off, but low spots you can't really do anything about other than another layer. I'm also trying to feather out the edges so that it will blend in better with the wall. This is a sanding screen you can use for drywall. It has like a wire mesh on it, and I'm also using a sanding sponge. The sanding screen is great because it doesn't get all clogged up with dust like the sponge can, but I find that using a combination of the two gives the smoothest result. Once everything is smooth, you go over it with primer. It's pretty important to use primer before the paint because the spackle that you use absorbs the paint differently than the rest of the wall, and so it will look different when you paint on top of it if you don't prime it first. Here's a look at it all painted. You can use the same sort of mesh tape if you have any large cracks in your wall. If you just spackle over a crack without the tape, it will probably just crack again in the same spot. So to try to prevent that, you want to embed the tape in a little bit of spackle. Again, I fill it in just a little bit to get it smoothed out and wait for that to dry before coming back for another coat. When you come back to sand, you want to make sure you don't sand too aggressively over the tape because you don't want to expose that again, but do try to get the edges really feathered out. And here's the end result. No more crack under the window. Next step is to install our baseboards.